Howdy, folks. This is my wife telling her story of what it's like to be a caregiver for a veteran with PTSD. The caregiver story is not uncommon, but it is mostly unheard. We hope this helps.
Howdy, babe.
Hi.
Welcome to the channel.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for agreeing to do this project.
You're welcome.
So, how many people know your story as a caregiver for someone with PTSD?
Probably less than a handful, and those that do know would be just parts of my story.
Like, your folks don't know the whole story, do they?
No.
Yeah. Pretty common, I think. So, why are you telling this story now? Why put it out on the internet?
Well, because you asked me. I think with the help of therapy, feeling like I can share my story, and also a podcast that I came across, I think last year, where some ladies were talking about PTSD, and I realized I needed that, and it really helped me and emboldened me to maybe share my story would be okay.
It's more than okay. It's awesome. Thank you. So, do you want to tell folks how we met? Tell the backstory?
Sure. Yeah, kind of set the stage. So we had met in Florida. I had moved out to Florida in 2004, April. I had a job change and was, figuring things out. Had found a house and just bought a house and all that. And Brian had moved out there for training. And so we were both kind of new to the area, figuring things out. And just kind of a fluke, honestly. We met at church. It was not the church that I'd been going to or anything else, but I ended up going to this other church and met Brian. And he helped me with hurricane cleanup. And we started, having Bible studies together. And then by September, we met in August. By September, we were dating. And we're engaged by January of 2005. So our courtship was short and, wonderful.
Yeah, it was.
So things were moving pretty quickly. And we kind of figured, well, we'll have a longer engagement as we're figuring things out. You finished up with training and got sent to your next duty station, which luckily was not too far away. It was in North Carolina. But we began our long distance relationship, first of several. And we're trying to plan our wedding and figure out living situation for Brian. Does he get an apartment, buy a house, trying to figure all that out. And then he found out he would be deploying later in the year. So we decided, okay, we'll get married in July. And, bought a house and got things figured out and got married. And we had about 6 weeks between our wedding and deployment. And so he took me to North Carolina and showed me the house and how to, pay his bills and account passwords and paperwork to, military ID and all of that stuff. 6 weeks of just figuring all that out. And then he took off on his first deployment. Since I knew him, it's not his first deployment. And I went back to Florida so that I could sell my house and figure out, I worked things out with my work so I could work remotely in North Carolina. And, so it was just tying up things in Florida while he was deployed, and I had family come out and help me move and do all of that while he was away.
Didn't you have to FedEx me something to sell your house when I was in Iraq?
I did. Little did I know that in Florida, even though I bought the house before I even knew Brian, once we got married, it became joint property. And so he had to sign all the paperwork. I thought, you'll be gone. You don't need to worry about it. It'll be fine. And yeah, trying to ship something to a war zone quickly was fun.
Expensive.
But we got it done and got my house sold, and I trucked all my stuff up to North Carolina and was combining our households and all of that while he was away. And that first deployment was a fairly typical, I think, Air Force deployment. It was 4 months, and we emailed and sometimes got to talk on the phone and all of that. And you came back in January of 2006, and so we started kind of figuring life out together for real, we thought.
Yeah.
So yeah, he came home and we were sorting through pots and pans and gear and everything else, trying to figure out how to organize the house. And
Yep. And you had a significant medical event about that time, or going on during that time.
That's right. I think right before you came home, or around that time, I had gone and seen a doctor, and I'd seen doctors previously about some issues with my cycle, and was never getting a real good answer. And my cycles were irregular, and now we're married and trying to figure out things for potential family. And finally was diagnosed with prolactinoma, which is a tumor on my pituitary that causes me to overproduce the hormone prolactin, which is the milk-making hormone, and it suppresses all the other hormones, so I couldn't have a normal cycle. So I started on medication that would suppress that and help me have regular cycles again, and made me feel pretty terrible most of the time. But I started that and things got better there.
It was a difficult thing for me to understand. I just wanted you to feel better and be cured and be fixed, and it wasn't that kind of a thing.
Yep, it's still ongoing.
Yeah, it's still ongoing.
Yep.
So we're doing better with it.
We are. We are.
So what happened next?
So we kind of figured, okay, Brian's home. We can kind of really start our life as a married couple. And as the new guy in his shop base, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but no kids, fairly unattached. He gets to go on all the TDYs and the trainings. And so I think February or March, he started going on 2-week, TDY here, a month, somewhere else. And I got to accompany him sometimes, but not all the time. And so he was gone a lot for the next several months. And somewhere in there, we found out he would be deploying again, this time as a loan to the Army. So their deployments are quite different from Air Force. They're typically longer and apparently come with 6 months of training beforehand. So we had that coming up, and sometime that summer, about July, found out that I was pregnant with our first, and
not what we had planned.
Not what we'd planned. I mean, we weren't avoiding getting pregnancy, but we were also, kind of hoping to have that happen after deployment so we could, experience it all together. And, first pregnancy, you don't know how things are going to go. Long way from any family support and all of that. But there it was. We were expecting our first, and Brian went to training. Was not around for a lot of the pregnancy. I got to visit about halfway through the pregnancy, and then one more time he got to come home right before, I think for a couple days, right before he left for Iraq for the year-long deployment.
Yeah.
So we didn't see each other. We got a couple vacations in that time before the deployment, but there was a lot of separation there, and then
I sat down and calculated it up one time, and in our first 3 years of marriage, we spent a grand total of 8 months physically together. And not all of that was in our house. A lot of it was in hotel rooms. Probably half of it, close to half of it, was in hotel rooms.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty crazy.
not how I would have ever planned it.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yep.
So
at that point, he deploys, and I don't know how that works for everybody else, but it seemed like every time he left for any extended period of time, the weirdest things would happen. Like, suddenly there was mice in the house. Or the day he deployed on this second deployment, we had guys with hatchets in our backyard. I was actually on the phone with my mom crying, because I just left Brian, and I go, "Oh, Mom, if I don't call you back in 10 minutes, call 911 because there's some guys with hatchets in my backyard," and hung up.
And then promptly went out and confronted him.
Yes. All was fine. They were clearing the ditch. They were hired by the neighborhood or something. But yes.
So what happened next?
Well, I think next was just kind of preparing for baby coming. Prior to Brian leaving, we spent some time getting crib, figuring out the nursery, doing all that, recording videos of Brian reading stories so that I could play that for baby once baby came along. But now that he was gone, I was doing Lamaze classes, and I needed a partner. And my mom came out to visit and came to one class, and then I enlisted the master sergeant's wife in Brian's shop, who was a friend, to also be my partner, and she agreed to be there at the birth and help me with all of that. So I was kind of preparing for that. My dad was able to come and spend several weeks with me because his job was something he could do remotely, and so he was able to be there, and my mom was going to come closer to the due date. But my daughter decided to come a week early, so my mom was not there, and my brother happened to be on spring break visiting, so I had my dad, I had my younger brother, and I had my friend there in the labor and delivery room, and Brian on a cell phone.
Satellite phone.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. It was nothing like I ever imagined having a baby like that. And so, yeah, it was a long day for Brian. I think I called sometime after midnight, my time, and I had Meredith around noon that day. And he was on the phone, I think, for the whole time. I fell asleep in and out of labor, but I think he was there the whole time. My doctor was easily distracted by the cell phone. He would hear things. Was that a helicopter? I'm just focused.
Yeah. Guy was a goob.
Yes. But we had a baby girl, Meredith, and she was healthy, and I had family support for a little while after she was born, and then it was on to single parenting and trying to figure all of that out. So I had good support with church, and I'd go there, and the ladies were wonderful and helpful, but I was pretty tired trying to do everything.
Yeah. Not the way we wanted it to be.
Nope.
We made it.
We did. We did.
And I didn't get to come home and see you guys until Meredith was 7 months old, I think. Got my 2 weeks of R&R.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was good. It was wonderful to meet my daughter and spend time with you guys, but it was still hectic. I had just come out of Iraq and was going back and wasn't able to be fully present. But
and Meredith was that was a rough time for her. she was teething and she had an ear infection, and so she was whining the whole 2 weeks, and I was wanting it to be relaxing and, wonderful, and I was stressed, and I'm sure it was stressful for you.
Yep.
Meredith knew her daddy's voice from those videos, and she would always perk up when I'd put the phone up to her and hear your voice.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about any of the support you had from the base or the unit or anybody, family, during that time? I mean, you've kind of said it was single parenting.
Yeah, so I had family that was, the closest family was about 8 hours away, and I had, an aunt, one or two of my aunts come up and visit. My brother came and visited occasionally. I had parents come and go. Brian's sister spent 2 months with me after Meredith was born, which was a huge help because I was still working full-time remotely. And it was hard sometimes to get my work done and entertain a 4, 5, 6-month-old baby. And I had support from Brian's shop, with keeping the lawn mowed, once Meredith came along, because that was a little harder for me to manage. There was also like a family support office, or I don't remember the title that they had for their office. And they had dinners, I can't remember the frequency, every couple weeks or something like that, for families of deployed. And they would have a whole bunch of officers, commanders, people there to meet you and find out if you needed anything. Since Brian was the only one deployed from the base, I guess, I was the only one at the dinners, and it was kind of awkward. They didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know what to do with all of that. So I kind of stopped going. I mean, they were very nice and said, if you ever need anything, call. I never called. So they were there as support if I needed it, I guess. And then there was a nurse that was, after Meredith was born, who would come and make home visits and check on Meredith, on her development, check on me, make sure I was doing okay. And shortly before Brian was due to come back, I remember her handing me a pamphlet. I don't really remember much of what was in it. It was kind of like a little trifold deal that gave real basic information of your, veteran might, need more space and time to process things from their deployment. Noises might be triggering, but it was real basic. It didn't say anything about PTSD or trauma. It just kind of said, give them space, give them time, to reintegrate. I thought, great, I got this. And that was my preparation for Brian returning.
And that's probably a good place to stop, because what happened next was coming home after a deployment that turned into 13 months, and we'll do that next time.
That sounds good.
Thanks, babe.
You're welcome.